It was a Carney coronation on Sunday. The federal Liberals chose former Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney to take over party leadership from Justin Trudeau and pilot them into the next federal election. Joining us to discuss the party's transition is former Liberal MP Adam Vaughan. Adam, thank you so much for being with us today. I want to start with last night's results, the numbers here. This was a landslide victory for Mark Carney. He got nearly 86% of the votes here. What do you think the results signal to the rest of Canada?
Well, I think Liberal Party members saw the same thing that Canadians are seeing. It's why the Liberal numbers are up in the polls. We're in a very unprecedented time, and I think that Canadians are looking for adults to be leading parties and for people with experience in international finance to be in charge. And I think Liberals and Canadians are going to be very happy that Mark Carney has decided to step up and lead the Liberals, but more importantly, protect Canada's economy and move this country forward in a way that quite clearly slogans and insults and nicknames. We've seen what that does south of the border. We've seen what the sort of Elon Musk approach to government does. I think Liberals and Canadians can be happy with the selection that's been made, and we'll get a chance to test them in an election coming up.
You mentioned the attack ads that we've been seeing already here. A lot of Canadians may not know who Mark Carney is as a political figure. So how does Carney get in front of the narrative? How does he control this narrative here before the commentary really takes off?
Well, I think Canadians will now get to know, what his credentials are. This is not a lifelong politician. This one is somebody with extensive experience in global finance. Not only is he sort of, the former chair of the board of Brookfield Asset Management, which is one of the largest investment companies on the planet, but he's also run the Bank of England, and he was the governor of the Bank of England when they went through Brexit and the turmoil that was caused by that. And he was the bank of governor when Stephen Harper chose him to be the head of the Bank of Canada when the financial meltdown in 2008 happened. So this is someone with an extensive resume of understanding how economies work, how global finance works. And I think that, the Poilievre has already tried to insult him into a corner, but I think the reality is when you compare Pierre Poilievre's resume to Mark Carney's resume, and you think about where you want Canada to be in the next couple of years as we deal with Donald Trump, do you want someone whose last private sector job was almost literally being a paperboy, or do you want someone who's run two major financial institutions globally? I think Canadians have made the decision, and you can see the numbers reflected in the polls. They want an adult to lead this country. They want someone with financial experience to lead this country, and they want someone who's been through financial crises before and has the track record to show that we come out the other side whole as a country.
There's been some criticism of Mark Carney's ability to speak and engage in French. We saw some flubs during the candidate debate among the Liberal leadership candidates here. How detrimental do you think this could be to his ability to appeal to all Canadians?
Look, this country, it's a bilingual country. We've seen politicians from Quebec, Jean Chrétien, for example, whose English wasn't perfect, but boy, he could communicate. And the issue here is not whether you've got sort of, catchy slogans that you can rip off at a moment's notice. The issue here is, are you a good thinker? Is what you're saying make sense? If his English or his French or his charisma isn't where, sort of Pierre Poilievre thinks it should be, that's one thing. But if you're talking about someone who's smart, who thinks before he talks, who says things that are wise, he may have a halting accent in one language or the other, and that's not uncommon in Canada. The issue is he an effective communicator? Is he a good communicator? Is what he's communicating is more important? Is the message good? And I think in that regard, I think Canadians have seen what happens when all you have is fancy slogans. We have that south of the border. We have that in the Conservative Party now. What Canadians need is someone who can get us through some choppy water economically over the next few years and make sure our country's economy and the families that depend on it come out whole at the end of the day. That's more important than whether or not you can conjugate a verb perfectly every time.
So how does the Liberal Party do that? How does Mark Carney as a leader do that? Do they have to change course compared to what Justin Trudeau and his administration did? How do they appeal to Canadians? What's your next move?
Well, I think the next thing is to step out his economic credentials. I mean, we've seen over the weekend the Conservatives have tried to attack him because he moved the tax address a Bay Street office onto a Wall Street office from Canada, the United States, and try to pretend that there were jobs lost. There hasn't been one Brookfield asset job lost as a result of this change. What the Conservatives are trying to say is that being trained overseas at Harvard or Oxford means he's not Canadian. We'll try to tell that to every single foreign-born professional in this country, that if you come from one of the best universities in the world, but it doesn't have to be in Canada, you're suddenly not Canadian. It's one of the reasons we have a doctor shortage. You can come from Oxford or Harvard and still not being seen as Canadian. And quite frankly, that's kind of xenophobia, borders on racism a lot of the time. And I don't think Canadians are going to take that, certainly not Canadians in major urban areas. The other thing is they tried to go after him for moving the head office of Brookfield Asset Management. He moved the tax address. He didn't lose. There wasn't one Canadian who lost a job. There
So
wasn't.
why doesn't he come out and say that? Why doesn't he come out and defend himself?
You're hearing somebody say it now, but Pierre Poilievre can cavalierly talk about shutting down the CBC and tossing 8,000 Canadians onto the pavement. Nobody waves a bat at that. He chews an apple and spits the food everywhere, but he's really spitting on Canadians, and he's talking about unemploying 8,000 people in Canada because he doesn't like the news. Right. So if the comparison is about wise management, sound judgment, and adult leadership, you've got somebody who likes to chomp on apples and spout slogans, and you've got somebody who's led the Bank of England, the Bank of Canada, has worked in the major investment fields globally, and is in a really good position to protect our economy, but more importantly, protect our jobs. Mark Carney isn't promising to unemploy 8,000 Canadians. Pierre Poilievre is. That's a choice that Canadians are going to have to think about, because it doesn't stop with the CBC with the Conservatives. We need to build a strong Canadian economy. We need to protect our identity. We need to protect our institutions from attacks that are coming from south of the border. And the question is chomping on an apple and three-word slogans going to do it? Or is someone who knows how to steer a major financial institution through a major meltdown globally, is that the right person? And I think Canadians are understanding we want an adult in the room. We want someone with financial experience in the room, with private sector experience, and who also understands government. That person is Mark Carney, and that's the choice Canadians are going to have in front of them when they go to the polls very shortly.
Okay, we will leave it at that. We'll learn what that date will be, hopefully really soon. Adam Vaughan, as always, we thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us.
Nice to talk.